So people have asked the Community Action Network why we are doing this. Why are we supporting Amos Yee? Amos Yee is a brat. Yeah, some people have told me that. He is an ill-disciplined child. He had a very nice guy, Vincent Law, who wanted to bail him out, but yet he falsely accused him of being a molester. So what this boy really needs is a tight slap. That's what some people tell me. Yeah, we shouldn't be supporting someone like him. Now, I think we all need to be very clear here why we are supporting this cause. We support Amos Yee because we are against what the state is doing to a 16-year-old child. Arresting him, detaining him, and torturing him just because he uploaded a YouTube video that some people didn't agree with. Now, if the government can do this to Amos Yee, the government can also do this to any other 16-year-old children. The government can also do this to every other Singaporean just because we have views which they deem unacceptable. It is for this reason that is why we have decided to organize this event. It is for this reason that we organized the petition and the solidarity vigil a few weeks back so that we can take a strong stand that we will not accept the crackdown on freedom of speech by the Singapore government. Now, we have a few speakers lined up. I would like to introduce the first speaker. Her name is Brema Mati. Brema Mati is the president of MARUAH. She will be the first to take the stage among the slate of 4 speakers we have. So we have Braema Mati. Second, we have Teo Soh Lung from Function 8. And then we have Miak Siew, who is a pastor with the Free Community Church. And lastly, we have Jolene, who is a women's rights activist in Singapore. So without further ado, may I invite Ms. Braema Mathi to come up to the mount.
Firstly, thank you everyone for coming. I do think this is an important occasion, but it is also a difficult one, I feel personally, to find our own sense of balance. I would like to thank Ken for organizing this and for also giving MARUAH an opportunity to speak here. But before I begin, I first would like to say we also do this with some kind of a worry, a concern, because this can run into sub judice, because tomorrow is the verdict and we do not want to cross the line and get into trouble, not because we are afraid, but because we have so many other things to do. And then all these things take up a lot of your time, your worries and your concerns. So the 4 speakers, I think, are wonderful in wanting to be part of Ken's efforts, as you can see with all the posters and all that they have done. What am I going to say in terms of this whole thing about Amos Yee? There are about 4 points that I would like to make. The first is a little story that I would like to share. The second is about us as a society. The third is about Amos Yee himself. And lastly, about the government and what are we doing. So what is this story that I would like to tell? It is about Mr. Alan Turing. I was part of the Commonwealth Leadership Program last year and ended up at Manchester University. Shamefully, I have not heard about this man at all before. It's a shame because he's brilliant. He gave a lot of crypt analysis, mathematical biologist, and most importantly, during World War II, he decoded a lot of the Nazi codes so that the British were at least one step ahead. But sadly, in 1952, an affair that he was having with a male student came to light. He was a homosexual. That was seen as his flaw. So the government sentenced him to chemical castration. He was pumped with estrogen, which made him bloat. He lost his athletic frame, and then finally he descended into depression as well as a kind of madness. So what did he do? He pumped an apple with cyanide. He bit into it. So interesting, right? When you have brilliant people, it's like almost your fairy tale story, right? He bit into the apple and he died. And today in Manchester University, there's a sculpture that tells us this is Mr. Turing. It is a way for all of us to remember that there was a genius. There was a man whose brilliance we did not appreciate. There was a man who, in the end, we as the government, so to speak, sentenced to a life of misery that he had to take his own life. The good news about this is that the public are appalled. The public have done some good things about it. And also at the same time, the former Prime Minister of Britain, Mr. George Osborne, apologized. He made a clear apology to the family and to society, saying that that was the wrong decision. I thought that was heartening. Thank you. Even if we are all the time making mistakes. The second part is Turing the only person? I'm a literature person, so I have George Boswell as one of them. I'm a little bit distracted, sorry, by the stuff on Lee Kuan Yew and all that. I would like to say that I came because it's all about Amos Yee. Yeah? So what George Boswell was 13, 14, writing a lot of interesting essays, got into a lot of trouble, was pale, was not great of health. But what did he give the world? He gave the world the life of Samuel Johnson, that today is seen as one of the best biographies ever. We also have spiritual young fellas who tell us many things. What am I trying to say in all of this? Is Amos Yee in this category? Is he a genius? I don't know, maybe. But we do know that he's a good writer. We do know that he's a provocator. We do know that he's mischievous. All of us have seen his mischief. We also know that he thinks well. We also know that he can be offensive because he does not care. We also know that he has been rude to a kind man like Mr. Vincent Law. All this he has done because he only pursues one thing. I want my space. My space to write freely, to write what I think, to speak up, etc. Is that so wrong that we have this slew of charges against him? Only time and history can tell whether we have a genius in our midst or just a little silly boy. We wouldn't know. So I come to the second part. Society. Where are we? I think this is a wonderful crowd that turned up. It is amazing. But who are we at the same time? If we look at Turing, we look at Boswell, we look at Amos, all of it, a lot of it depended on society and how society saw people. In the case of us, Singaporeans, we live in a world of today that is smart, more ideas, more statements, more annoyance, more silliness, more smartness, and views upon views are expressed in Facebook, Twitter, etc. There's a lot of expressions, there's a lot of information. Are we then, as a society, going to get annoyed at everything? What is our norm in our society? If it doesn't fit in with my thinking, is that other person all wrong? I think this is the challenge that we are going to face going forward. It's an important question and a reflection that we need to explore on how we are developing as a people and as a nation. Is our value system getting more intolerant like how the British were in the 1950s, and that we too are asking for a castration? spiritually. Stop writing. Stop doing all this. It's a castration. You have no right to write like this. Who are you? Who are we? Do we have the right over an opinion to run to the police station and file a complaint? That is the next stage of our own development. And I ask this as, are we more keen to kill off, inverted commas, people who are annoying, people who affect my sensibilities, people whom I think you are not with me, therefore you are on the outside, a little bit of a rascal out there. I think this is a serious question for all of us in our society. We can take all the rotten tomatoes and the eggs and throw at the government, that's all fine. But we too have to look at ourselves, I feel. The last part, because of the complaints, Amos has been charged and found guilty. We all know what about the obscenity and the comments he has made about the Christians. He has been in remand for 55 days, I am told, by the numbers that I think Mrs. Mary Toh has shared. And we also have the most important thing about Amos is that he's 16 years of age. And he has been charged. Amos Yee has been threatened while under remand. He has been slapped while walking to court, has been shackled while being brought into court. These are actions that are cruel and dehumanizing to the young boy, to anybody, but he's 16. Yet, Singapore is a signatory to the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child. Now, this is a UN document that is like a governance over the whole world on what is appropriate behavior. And Article 40, Clause 1 says, parties recognize the right of every child alleged as accused of or recognized as having infringed the penal law to be treated in a manner consistent with the promotion of the child's sense of dignity and worth, which reinforces the child's respect for the human rights and fundamental freedoms of others, and takes into account the child's age and the desirability of promoting the child's reintegration and the child assuming a constructive role in society. So whatever the state does under the CRC, Convention on the Rights of the Child, it must move towards this positive outcome. While you punish, while you do whatever that is appropriate, it must have this constructive outcome. Now let us look at Singapore. We call these a state obligation under UN terms. Singapore has violated the state obligation where the CRC is concerned. Singapore must explain how they are reconciling the local laws to the CRC, especially under Article 41. That has to be done. The next part is we have many international bodies also writing to the government. What then can I say about this whole, in a lot of ways, like a saga? Yes, Amos Yee is quite a little naughty boy, right? But he's also, from all accounts that we have read and heard, he's an intelligent boy. Does intelligence then mean that you can do anything and there is no recourse? Of course not. We are obliged to guide, to help, to nurture. All these are difficult words when we are dealing with a very intelligent boy. But our laws, currently our laws, are they adequate enough to deal with this state of affairs? That is the big question. When a person is 16 or 17 years old, how are we going to deal when it becomes freedom of expression issue? If he had taken a knife and stabbed someone, it is easier. But this is different situation when it comes to freedom of expression. So we are MARUAH, a human rights group. We are of the view that characters like Amos will need a different approach. It is perhaps a little bit too late right now for Amos Yee. The trial is ongoing, and tomorrow there's another maybe final verdict on it. I wouldn't know. We are asking many here for freedom. We also have to accept one fact, that the state is already caught in its own bind. It acted on the current slate of laws, and not really all of us know what to do with it. But what can we do for Amos Yee? He has already spent so many days in prison. He, like Mr. Turing, is getting more frail psychologically, mentally, and also maybe physically. What is it that we want for him? We know what he wants for himself. He wants his space to keep writing. How are we going to find that balance? Can there be counseling? Conditional counseling? Will he accept it? These are all the avenues that need to be explored, and it is our hope that as more and more people use the social media to express themselves, that we find new ways of dealing with people, and not all the time pulling out Defamation Act and other acts that actually cripple your spirit when it comes to freedom of expression. And lastly, I would just say that Amos Yee hopefully doesn't become it will be sad if he becomes a very big character in Singapore's history because of us. Because of us not knowing how to deal with a case like Amos Yee, who is desiring of space for his own thoughts. And therefore, I say lastly is, did we start off too early with this boy in terms of punishment? He's 16. Is it because we do not have enough tools to deal with the case of Amos Yee? Do we have the power to really say, stop everything and release him? The state has to think very hard on what it can do within the confines of the journey it has started. More importantly, we need a better approach when it comes to other below 18. CRC is 18 and below. Is below 18, not 18 and below. It's below 18 when it comes to using their approach to express themselves. We need a new approach. So with that, I would like to say
thank you, Braema. Our next speaker is Teo Soh Lung. Soh Lung is an activist with Function 8. She's a very seasoned activist. I would like to encourage all of you to buy her book. Yeah, it's called Beyond the Blue Gate, the memoirs of a political prisoner. It's available at at major bookstores. Yeah, and also at Page Setters, the company that published the book. So a big round of applause to Teo Soh Lung, please.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
I am very, very happy to see such a large crowd on such a hot day. And I understand some of you are not English speaking. So I have here Mr. Cheng Beng Kai. He will interpret what I'm going to say. Thank you. Now, we can summarize. Mr. Cheng will will summarize what I say, not going line by line. What I want to say are a few points, about 3 or 4 points. The prosecution of Amos Yee as well as Roy Gung reminds me very much of what happened in 1987 when 22 people were arrested under the ISA. There was not a single public protest in Singapore, but worldwide, our friends and strangers all over the world were protesting about our arrest, our unreasonable arrest and detention under the Internal Security Act.
关于最近严艺玲， Sorry, can you hear me? Okay. I just do a summary. 关于最近这个严艺玲以及 Amos Yee 的事情，张女士想起了87年的时候那一次的逮捕事件，那个事情当然引起很大的轰动。OK， 其实全世界对于当年对于这个事情都非常的有反应。
In 87, just like what we had today, in 87 there was a forum at the NUS. I think it was also organized by IPS. And then Mr. Feedback, Dr. Tan Cheng Bok, was answering questions about our arrest under the ISA. Similarly, a few days ago, Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong was also questioned at the SG50 forum about both Roy Gung and Amos Yee.
上回那个逮捕事件的时候，曾经有人问起，在国立大学有人问起这个事情，那么陈清木以前的那个国会议员，有做一些捉大，这整个情况就像最近这个事情，同样这个事情发生的时候，我们的总理李显龙先生也在国会，因为赢过，对不起，在法院，因为严艺玲的事情，牵涉其内。
Now, the last speaker, Ms. Brema, had mentioned about the Convention on the Rights of the Child. Singapore signed the convention in 1995, and it made its first report to the United Nations in 2002. Under the convention, the definition of child is any person below the age of 18. As you know, Singapore's definition of child varies from legislation to legislation.
关于这个儿童法令，在国际上的公约，新加坡政府其实都已经签了。关于儿童的定义，在国际上一般上就是18岁，但是新加坡是从不同的法令到不同的法令做了不同的解释，都不是18岁。
So we have a child that's defined 7 years, below 7 years. And then we have the juvenile, who is defined as a person from 7 years to 14 years. And a young person from 14 years to below 16 years. But then the Women's Charter considers a child as below 21 years old, and he must be supported by his parents. And then lastly, we have our own election law, which says that if you are below 21 years, you cannot vote your government.
新加坡的妇女公约对于所谓的孩子的定义，其实是以21岁为主。那么当然，不同的公约都有不同的规定。
So you cannot vote for your government, but you are also not considered as a child. What is this? You know, as early as 2003, the United Nations, in its recommendation to Singapore, is that please adopt the age for a child to define the child as below 18 years because we are a developed country. But for so many years, from 2003 until today, that's about 13 years, we have still not adopted this age for the definition of a child.
我们到现在已经过了12或者13年了，但仍然没有同意对这个孩子的年龄的这个定义。
In recent years, the government has implemented laws and they have set up special courts for young people. They have the youth court and they have special sentences for young people. But because the age is 16 and below, Amos falls out of this category and cannot be treated as a child.
遗盆伤歧视要根据他的年龄，是完全不应该在现在的我们所知道的这些法令下被提供的，但事实上他就是被提供的。
Now, as you know, Amos is just a few months older than 16 years, so he cannot be considered as a child. He is treated as an adult. And the treatment, as you all know, is horrendous. He was arrested, shackled, and sent to the police station. And then in court, he was also shackled. So it's unreasonable that a child, that he, being just a few months older than 16, should be treated in this way.
遗盆伤歧视就是比16岁稍微多了几个月，但是他就被按照成人法令来控告。在整个审问跟的过程里面，他其实都是经常的被上考的，那么这个过程其实是非常可怕的。
And because of how he is treated and why is he treated in this way? If he's an adult, he would have been sentenced and having the trial. If he is convicted, he would have been sentenced and no questions will be, no further remand would have happened. But in Amos' case, somehow there are so many shocking interventions in the proceedings. So much so that he has now gone into the Institute of Mental Health. And by tomorrow, he will be 2 weeks in the Institute of Mental Health.
如果是作为一个成人来讲的话，他被判罪，那么事情也就是这样了。但是我们都知道，遗盆伤这个在整个这个案件的过程里面，其实是我们都看到他所受到的遭遇。
He therefore has suffered more than an adult, and we hope that tomorrow the decision will be to free him, because not only he has suffered, his family too have suffered, and this is totally unjust in this place.
我们真的希望明天他能够获得释放，因为这整个都是不公平的。
And so we hope tomorrow that the court will free Amos Yee. Shall we shout, free Amos Yee? Free Amos Yee! Free Amos Yee! Free Amos Yee! And free Amos Yee! Free Amos Yee! Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Hello. What? Hello. Okay, thank you so long for that. Our next speaker is Jolene Tan. Jolene Tan is a writer and a women's rights activist. She's also a published author. She published a book of fiction called Certain Exposure. So if you'd like to, you can go down to Kinokuniya or any of the major bookstores to purchase this book. So without further ado, can I invite Jolene Tan on stage, please? Oh, here she is. Okay.
Enormous thanks to Jolene and the team. Thank you so much for organizing this and for... oh, I see. Like this. Okay, Ken, thank you. Thank you, Jonathan, and everybody for organizing this and people for coming. I think some people may have seen that recently Mary Toh, who is Amos Yee's mother, posted on her Facebook a very heartfelt message saying sorry to her son. It is not Mary Toh who should be saying sorry to Amos Yee. She's not the one. Us, our state and our society, we are destroying a boy. Let's not retreat to the law here. Let's think about the human bodies and the human minds involved. Because the law isn't something abstract. And if we think of the law as being above human beings, then the law will very quickly become inhuman, or worse, anti-human. So let's stick to the basics. We are destroying a boy. The main question I want to ask today is why? Why are we destroying a boy? What good does it do to destroy him? Let me first explain what I mean about destruction. The state's decision to prosecute Amos Yee inherently involves violence. First, arrest, then imprisonment, shackles, the terror and the powerlessness of not knowing how much longer you'll be in prison, with no company, no purpose, no activity, no relationships, no change. And we've heard that it goes beyond that. There have been no nights and no days, just the same walls of the cell 23 hours a day, the glare of lights that never go out. Even aside from the Amos Yee case, I think these reports raise very serious questions about the state of prison practice in Singapore. I used to work in a prisoners' rights organisation in the UK, and one thing that I learned is that remand should not be a punitive experience. Remand prisoners are either not yet guilty of any crime, or, in Amos's case, they have not yet been found by a court to deserve a prison sentence. So as a simple matter of fairness, when someone is in prison to keep them from absconding, when they're on the remand to keep them from absconding, the conditions in prison should not themselves be further punishing them. They should have better conditions than prisoners on sentence. But whatever the kind of prisoner, whether it's remand or sentence, being kept in a cell 23 hours of a day shows failure in the prison system. This quantity of confinement is completely destructive of the physical and psychological well-being of the prisoner and of their ability to later function in the community. It is only testimony to Amos Yee's phenomenal resilience that he kept smiling and waving and eating bananas in the courtroom for as long as he did. But he isn't doing that any longer. Because it doesn't matter how strong you are. No one can be ground by the gears of the criminal justice machine. No one can be trapped without sense and without clarity and hold out forever. Sooner or later, it will crush you. And it is crushing Amos now. He has already spoken of distress so deep that he wanted to kill himself. Just initiating a prosecution, just setting this whole machine into motion has had these severe consequences. So don't you doubt it. We are destroying a boy. But it's gone even further than this. We've heard, and the state has not denied, that the response to Amos Yee's distress was to strap him to a bed for more than a day. Sure, that's going to make him feel a lot better. And now he's being detained in IMH, in conditions which are not centered on his needs and which also are likely to hurt his well-being. I don't want to speculate on the claims that he has poor mental health or autism, things which in the public's mind are now being wrongly conflated with criminality, stigmatizing people with autism and mental illness even further. I just want to point out that whatever the truth about Amos Yee, shutting someone up in an institution is a very problematic way to respond to alleged mental health or autism-related needs. Autism is not an illness. It is not something to cure. It is not something that you, quote, treat, unquote. And poor mental health is something that is almost never improved by institutionalization. Taking people out of the community against their will should always be a last resort. What's happened to Amos Yee here and how it's being reported is sending the message to society at large that physical force, physical strength, Isolation against your will and general dehumanization is how to respond to people with mental health needs or autism. And from the viewpoint of public awareness for this community, for these communities, because they're not the same community, this is a disaster. So we are destroying a boy and we are hurting vulnerable people. Which brings me back to the first question that I asked. Why? Why are we doing this? What human purpose is served? Knowing that prosecution is in itself a tool which inflicts so much suffering, knowing that the criminal justice system has enormous consequences for anyone caught up in it, when and how can we justify its use? This whole affair came from a few minutes when one 16-year-old decided to vent about his parents, God, and the system. Frankly, this kind of venting is part of the proper and natural order of things. There is nothing more ordinary in the world than indignant teenagers goading authority and throwing in a few tasteless sexual metaphors. There was no incitement to violence or hatred, no demonization of anyone vulnerable. In terms of threats to human society or human welfare, Amos Yee's video pretty much ranks up there with kittens clawing the curtains. The fact is, this society is not of one mind about Lee Kuan Yew or matters of political ideology, and this society should not be of one mind. Politics and political leaders are there precisely as a way for us to peaceably navigate the fact of our differences. We are all different. We've had different lives. We've had different amounts of money. We have different hearts, different bodies, different needs. We want different things. We worship differently or not at all. Everybody wants society to be set up in different ways. And the hope that underlies democracy is that we can commit to navigating those differences peacefully, through dialogue. The hope of democracy is that despite our differences, we all count equally, and we will all have the space and the chance to discuss and negotiate and be taken into account. Only if we speak openly about things can we figure out how, together, to make things better for everyone. It is hard to shake the sense that the answer to the question why we are destroying Amos Yee, is simply because he highlighted a political difference that has been deemed unacceptable by those in power. The fact is, many people do think that Lee Kuan Yew was, in Amos Yee's words, a horrible person. The fact is, there are many people who wanted, even desperately wanted, to see the end of his influence on society. And everyone should have the right to express their opinions about the country's political leadership and direction without being silenced by the criminal law. The prosecution of Amos Yee casts serious doubt on the protection of that right in Singapore. Amos Yee gave voice to political differences about the leadership of literally the most powerful man in our history. He criticized the way that that man's power shaped the society that we live in. If we destroy him for this reason, then we strike at the heart of democracy itself.
Thank you, Jolene, for the wonderful speech. Our next speaker, he's a pastor with the Free Community Church. His name is Miak Siew. So please give a round of applause to Mr. Miak Siew. Come on stage.
Hi everyone. Unlike the previous speakers who did a lot of research and a lot of points to make, I have something quite different. Pardon?
Do you forgive Amos Yee or not?
I don't think there's anything to forgive, right? I mean, when a 16-year-old rants, a 16-year-old rants. I was 16-year-old before, though I didn't have YouTube back then, so it's quite different. Unlike the other speakers, I have interacted with Amos Yee before. He came to my church last year, I think sometime in November, and I didn't think much about it. He was just like another kid who comes to church. And just like another young visitor, church shopping, you know, you visit one church and then you go to another and you see which one works for you. And then he added me as a friend on Facebook. And then a few months later, in one of my posts online, he posted his own video as a response, like a troll, you know. I hope you all know what trolling is. And I told him, you know, you can publicize this on your own Facebook page, you can do what you want, but, you know, this is trolling. And then he continued doing that. So I did what I should do, unfriend, block. I think that's how you should treat a 16-year-old who's renting away. Not report him to the police, not threaten him with violence, and certainly not what is happening to him right now. I hope the government will consider a lighter approach. I won't say much longer, but I want to share with you a story that you're all familiar with in some way, and maybe more familiar to some than others. We all have heard the story of the emperor's new clothes. And it was a child who pointed at the emperor, wore no clothes. Now I tell you, that was not the end of the story. They didn't tell you the whole story because it was difficult to tell. The emperor did not continue marching to the end of his procession. He ordered for those who cried out that he wore no clothes to be arrested, even the little child. And he ordered the execution to silence them and decreed that any person who said that the emperor wore no clothes will be executed as well. The few rounded out were swiftly put to the guillotine, and the rest were quickly silenced, for they feared for their own lives. And so it was the emperor continued living the lie, thinking if he admitted that he couldn't see his own clothes, everyone would think that he was unfit for his office, or he was unpardonably stupid, because the swindlers told him that those who were unfit for office or unpardonably stupid could not see the garments. It has been 25 years since, and the emperor decided again to hold another procession to celebrate his rule. The people living in fear all these years pretended to see the emperor's clothes, afraid that they would suffer the fate of those who spoke otherwise years ago. But there was another generation who grew up not knowing of the procession and the executions 25 years ago, and many started to laugh at the emperor's nakedness. Enraged, the emperor again ordered them to be rounded up and executed. But this time, something different happened. Instead of being cowed by fear, many stood forward, standing with those who were being rounded up. Cut us down, and more will stand in our place. They cried, and more joined their ranks. The revolution was swift. The emperor was swiftly overthrown, and there was much rejoicing amongst the people. There are different endings to this tale, though. My favorite writer, Neil Gaiman, said once, he wrote, it has always been the prerogative of children and half-wits to point out the emperor wears no clothes. But the half-wit remains a half-wit, and the emperor remains an emperor. What happened before can happen again. People rounded out were swiftly put to the blade. The rest quickly silenced, for they feared for their own lives. The emperor remains an emperor. The choices we make shape who we are as a people. What kind of people do we want to be? Just because someone said something that you do not agree with, you want them jailed? I don't think that's right. We can live with differing opinions. We can live in difference with one another in this diversity that's so rich. This is the diversity and the beauty of that Singapore. I pray that we continue forging this, not the fake kind of harmony, but the real kind of resilience that it's built on trust, that's built on understanding and built on compassion. not by silencing people. Thank you.
Okay, thank you all very much. A big thank you to all our speakers. Please give them another round of applause for coming up here. Now, Amos Yee's sentencing will be happening tomorrow on Monday in court at 2 p.m. 2:30 p.m. So if you can, please go there and give your support to him. I'm very heartened by what the speakers have said, because in this era, this new era of Singapore, with the passing of the late Lee Kuan Yew, we are no knuckle-duster politics, yeah? Charging people in court, defaming them, suing them to bankruptcy. We as Singaporeans should say that this is not acceptable. Yes, enough is enough. Free Amos Yee! Free Amos Yee! Thank you very much.